Hi, I'm Scott Turansky. This is Joanne Miller, and we represent the National Center for Biblical Parenting. We're here doing a webinar because we believe that there are heart resources that we can use for all kinds of problems that children find themselves in, and parents are the ones who are often using those tools. We also believe that children are very different. All kinds of kids need different solutions. So I know there are a lot of other people listening to this presentation, both live now, and you'll be able to ask questions in a little bit, or on the web later. And I just want to say, first of all, that every family is different. So the solutions we bring to the table here for this particular family may be different than other families. Now, there's some things that are all the same, so you generally glean some ideas, and especially in the process, the way that we're trying to solve a problem. Children come with different history issues, they come with different personalities, they come with different temperaments, and just the family history sometimes, the things we've used may differ from one family to another, and so we may need to make some adjustments. So there's a lot of good things parents do. Sometimes we need to change to some other good things. My hope is that here in this webinar, we'll be able to give this particular couple some help in working with their particular situation. So what we're going to do now is open the line for Tracy. Go ahead and do that. And Tracy, I just want to get some information here about you, if I could, first of all. I want to know who lives in your home. Now, I don't need to know the names of your children, but I would like to know if there's a husband in the home, and the names, not the name, the gender and ages of your kids. Could you help me with that?
Sure. Scott and I have been married and started our family after we were married, and 21-year-old daughter that came to us. She came as an exchange student 3.5 years ago, and she is at OSU going to school now. And then we have Valerie, who's our oldest bio, and then we have Kevin, who's 18 months younger than Valerie. He's 11 now. Valerie will be 13 in July. And then Jaden is 5 years old, and she came to our family through adoption. She was adopted from internationally. She's been in the home for almost 5 years, 4.5 years.
Okay, so your oldest is adopted, and so is your youngest. Is that correct?
I want to clarify, the oldest is not adopted. She came as an exchange student from China. She lives with us as a family member now, though.
Got it. Okay, I'm understanding that now. So you have two children that are biological and one adopted and one exchange student living in your home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about what's going on and how we can help you?
Valerie's 12 years old. Valerie's been, first of all, she has a lot of medical issues. She has her whole life. She was diagnosed with some things at 8 weeks, and it's just been a continuation her whole life. But if you saw her on the street, she looks perfectly normal and healthy. But there's always this underlying thing she deals with. She, from very, very early, 3 years is the story I remember the earliest, she's always just been very challenging. We've never been able to discipline her the same as the other kids. We tried until she was about 10. We believed in spanking. We tried to spank. That was futile. It absolutely escalated everything. And then at 10, we realized that we needed to change our approach. And we started doing that, learned about grace parenting. Push on that, you can change. And so we made that adjustment. That now we feel like she just gets away with everything. She's not held accountable the way the other children are. The other children are becoming increasingly angry, a lot of issues in their relationship. She throws, if I'm allowed the term, she throws them under the bus a lot to get herself out of, being held accountable, and really challenging in their relationships and very difficult to parent.
Okay.
The discipline, I guess.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the other kids, when you say they're angry, you mean they're angry with her?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, a lot of resentment.
A lot of resentment, a lot of anger issues.
Okay.
She's very passive-aggressive and has, especially the 11-year-old, his whole life, she has hurt him quietly, privately. He'll say something happened. And, this happens with a lot of kids, but with Valerie just seems to be so escalated. She says that what he's saying is not true. She'll stick to her guns. hurting physically. Now that he's old enough that he can fight back, she has stopped the physical aggression with him because she knows that, it could hurt her, and then...
So she's still verbally abusive to him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we being clear? We're trying to be concise, but...
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let me ask you some more questions. I'm getting a picture here of Valerie. Let me ask you some questions. Is she in school? What grade is she in?
She's in 6th grade. She currently, right now, she was brought home in December. We just felt like we had a lot of heart issues. We brought her home to homeschool her this semester. I brought her home at Christmas break. We thought we brought her home to work on these heart issues and to really show her our love and the love of the Father. And then we got a life-threatening diagnosis in January on her. Her health issues have turned to a place where she has a lot of really difficult health things that she's facing. And we just believe God actually brought her home for other reasons that we didn't know was coming. So now we're going through a lot of medical stuff, heading down to a major hospital away from home soon to do further testing and evaluation and workup and management. So her medical stuff, somebody once said to me that when you parent a child with, that you parent different. And we don't know what's been our role and what's been her. We know we're not making it up that she's very difficult to parent.
Sure.
We don't know our role and how we parented her different as a result of her medical stuff.
And that's perfectly clear. I understand that we parent children differently because they have different needs. So I support that. I think it's good. However, sometimes we need to make some adjustments in certain ways. I would not suggest that you've necessarily done anything wrong. I can just help you go from where we are to where we need to be. Let me ask you some more questions. You said that she's in 6th grade, and since you brought her home in December, now we've had 4 months at home. Is she doing schoolwork, or is her medical issues hinder her from her education?
She is doing schoolwork. She's being held accountable in that way. I will admit, though, that the diagnoses have been challenging, and so we've pared school back just this semester, minimum to the absolute essentials for this one semester, so that she could wrap her brain around everything. We have a lot of medical, a lot of doctor visits, things like that.
Okay.
But she definitely is.
That makes sense, and I would do the same thing. I'd pull back on the education because right now her health is a challenge, and we don't want her to feel like a failure. So we're trying to help her on a number of levels. So I think that's a good thing that you're doing. Let's go to so she's being homeschooled now. Okay, that's helpful to know. Let's ask some more questions here about her when she. Let's talk about how when she gets up in the morning. Well, let's start at nighttime. Does she have a bedtime? Does she go to bed? Is it hard to get her in bed? Are we fighting at bedtime? How's getting to bed going?
All of our kids have always gone to bed well. That's not an issue. Valerie's challenges is that she has severe ADHD and attention only, so there's insomnia associated with that. But we do get her help, and so we manage that. But she's not a behavioral problem going to bed, not at all.
Is she on medication? Well, she must be on medications given all the issues that she's dealing
She's
with.
on a
right?
lot of medicine.
Okay, well that's
She's
fine.
on a lot of medicine.
Okay, we'll keep that in. I mean, that obviously can affect behavior if she's dealing with these kinds of things. But from what I understand, these things have been going on for years for you guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on here. What about in the morning when she wakes up? Does she wake up ready to attack the world, or does she wake up cheerful? What's her demeanor when she wakes up?
She wakes up slowly.
Very slow.
Okay.
She doesn't. She needs to be left alone, have her space, and then she wakes up slow. Now, she loves school. She's very social. So when she's in school, she's first to be ready. She's ready to go. But especially right now, she's kind of gotten into this lazy place with being home, and she's tougher to motivate right now. But I think that's a result of our decisions, and I kind of look back and wonder if bringing her home was the right move. But it is what it is at this point.
Okay. All right. When
you go back,
does she have some anger issues where she's I know she's passive aggressive, as you mentioned, that she responds that way, but does she verbally yell at you, those kinds of things when she gets angry?
Yes, she does.
And
She feels attacked. If any correction, no matter how kind, no matter how gentle, no matter how loving, she feels attacked. She feels that she's hated, and that's her first response. She used to rage before we started to change things at 10. She used to rage, yell, "I hate you." She'd go up to her room, holes in the walls. It used to be real bad. I don't know that she's gotten better, but that we've gotten better at diffusing those situations and learning how to keep it from going there.
what do you do?
What do we do?
Yeah, to prevent it from going
Give
into
in.
a rage.
I don't know that we give in.
Say that
We're
again.
we're not in her face. We don't yell at all. We try to reason with her, try to help her to recognize what she's done, and then try to any of our discipline, we try to correlate it with the offense. So throw something out there. If you leave the bike in the yard, you didn't put it away, then you do without your bike for a while. The problem that we deal with is she doesn't connect the offense with the discipline. No matter how close it is that we try to relate it, the offense in her eyes doesn't happen, and you hate me, you're just trying to be mean to me.
It's a personal attack. It's always been that way.
Okay.
And discipline. And I've also learned to give her some space and to come back and talk about it again later. I would say that there's always control issues. She needs to be in control, and I don't know if that's related to medical. I don't know.
Okay. And does giving her space help in how she handles things?
It definitely can help. She can go upstairs and she can have reflection time, and then we can go up and visit and talk. And we've learned that with her, it's very difficult sometimes to get a hold in. She's very hands off, but when we do that, you can feel her slowly melt into you. It's very slow, but she'll go there. Sometimes though, she can get you so fired up. It takes so much time to be able to get there to where you can be able to offer that. But I know it's helpful for her.
But in any kind of conflict, she does not feel safe.
And that's very, very important.
And so we have to try to hold her and love on her to let her know that she is safe before we try to teach and try to discipline or anything like that. Otherwise, we will not get
Keep her
anywhere.
heart. Yeah.
How do you make her feel safe?
We try to hold her, hug her, talk positive to her, tell her that we love her and how much she means to us, that we love her. We may not like the behavior, but we always love her. And we try to make that as clear as possible, that no matter what your behavior is, you're not going to change how we feel about you. We always love you no matter what.
And that was the purpose in bringing her home. But by doing that great parenting that we've learned how to do, it's taken us to this other level where she seems to just not have any accountability, because you can't, if there's that, and that's why we're with you. You read your books. I think through your help, we've learned great parenting. We've learned teaching the heart. But now we feel like we're creating a monster on some level, because there is no accountability and there's no discipline, because any discipline sends her over the edge. And I honestly, that's why we're here, right?
Okay. All right, so let me just, if we could change a few things here, I think one of the things that you're saying you wish you could see her change is the ability to handle conflict or correction, disagreements, and so on better, both with you and with her siblings, that she would be able to control her anger more effectively, and that she wouldn't take things as personally as she's often doing. Would you say those are good things that you'd like to work on?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So let's try to use a heart-based approach to try to develop some solutions for this. I understand that you have some medical conditions that you'll need to keep in mind and take into account. Those medical conditions may cause us to pause at points and make some adjustments along the way. Some days we may be able to push harder than others, keeping those things in mind. But we don't want to allow the medical concerns to be an excuse for a lack of firmness. And I know you're probably aware of this, but sometimes parents who have children who are sick, sometimes they excuse their bad behavior by saying something like, oh, well, she deserves a break. Maybe we shouldn't give her a hard time about this because she's feeling so sick. So we have to balance that. We do want to take her sickness into account, but the firmness is really important even in the midst of that, because she's dealing with inside of her body additional problems that other people wouldn't be dealing with. So whether a child has an allergy issue, or the child has some kind of attention deficit disorder issue, or a child has issues with some other physical or biological issues, those things are prompting her to feel uncomfortable with a lower tolerance or a threshold, so she likely will act out more often. What we want to do is raise her threshold, so even though she's uncomfortable physically or for whatever other reason, if we can raise that threshold, then we'll help her to be able to handle the challenges that she's facing every day. Now, in order to do this, I mean, you and I could spend a lot of time talking and uncover a lot of different things. I'm going to go back and try to give you some general solutions that I think will be helpful for you. And then once I do that, then maybe you would like to ask me some more questions in order to give some specifics. There's a lot I don't know. Your situation's very complex with a lot of pieces, but I think I can give you some things that'll get you started in moving in the right direction. Okay?
Me too. Yep.
Are you in front of a computer?
Yes.
And so you can see me, is that correct?
Right.
All right. I would like to, one of the things we have to do here is we have to identify the problem for Valerie in a way that she can embrace. So one of the main things we're going to do here, and I want to teach you to do, is transfer responsibility to Valerie for Valerie's problem. Valerie does not take responsibility for herself. Valerie blames problems on other people, argues about things, gets angry as a way of having a protective shell around her. She does not respond well to her own offenses and weaknesses. So Valerie has a problem. And what we want to do is, in part, we're going to transfer responsibility to Valerie, and we're going to do that in, I think, some non-disciplined times. And I would start this way. I would say to Valerie, I've noticed that there are times when you're pretty unhappy. And because you're unhappy, I think there are some things that we can help you with. Let me ask you, Valerie, what are some things that you think that you could change that would help your life to be more happy? Now, I don't think happiness, by the way, is the primary goal of life. All I'm saying is this might be the way to capture her heart a bit, because emotions are in the heart. All right, so maybe she'll dialogue with us, and if she will, this is a time when we're not disciplining her. This is not necessarily a threatening time for her, but if you could change some things about the way you relate to people. So the way we're phrasing this is this: if you could change some of the ways that you relate to people, what would those things be? And she may have no idea. And that's when you can come in and say, I've noticed that you have some issues sometimes that you get rather upset and angry. Probably that's one of the things you'd benefit from changing. You can think about it, but I think that would be one of the things that would be helpful for you. Secondly, when you find yourself in conflict situations where someone corrects you, or your brother doesn't like what you're doing, or he does something, you find those, it doesn't seem like you have a lot of tools to handle conflict areas. And it seems to me that you take a lot of life kind of personally. Now, those are the three things we mentioned because we think those things will be happy for her, will be helpful for her. But those three things become important pieces of the whole solution. Okay, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So this is a plan where we're sitting down with her and we're talking about some of her own issues and trying to help her understand them from to take responsibility for them. So we're asking the question, and then we're listing them. We're going to describe that as point A. You might even draw that on a piece of paper for her. That's point A, where we have these three issues. We're dealing with anger, we're taking things personally, and we have some tools for conflict. Those are the three things we're working on. Now, here's what I think we need to do, Valerie, and this you're talking to her. I think we want to try to get over here to point B, and I can coach you. This is what you want to say to her. I can coach you in ways to help you get to point B. I've got ideas for that. Which one of those would you like to start with? You pick. You know, which one would those be most helpful for me to help you with? She says, well, I think I'd like some ideas about conflict or anger, whatever it is. I'd like some ideas. Say, okay, I'd like to help you. Let's set a goal here of where we'd like to be. What would you like to be in this area of anger management, or where would you like to be in this area of dealing with conflict? And she says, I don't know, or something like that. You say, well, think about it. If you don't want to be angry, what do you want to be? Maybe she want to be peaceful, or maybe she'll want to be calm, or something like that. I say, okay, that's point B. Let's write that down. Whatever she says, we'll put down here. Or you might say, I want to help you to experience conflict in a way that has more tools. So I'm going to give you, we'll write down here. These are the kind of the solutions. Let's talk about point B, okay? That's what you're saying with her. How can I help you develop that? Now, let's look at some ideas in order to do this. Now, what we're doing here, we're not to the correction part yet. Okay, right now we're in the training part, we're exploring, we're trying to help her with this, and we say, we may even, and I would encourage you at some point along the line, we're going to bring some spiritual resources in here, and we say, when you are living life and you're feeling angry or taking things personally or feeling like you're in conflict, not handling it well, I know that you feel bad and you're unhappy about those things, but what do you think God wants you to do in those things? I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but how do you think God wants you to respond to those things? Let's talk about that. Because you know, Valerie, that God empowers us, He gives us a strength to move from point A to point B. That's what God does. And He puts something inside of us called the Holy Spirit in order to make that happen. I'm assuming you guys are Christians.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're drawing some spiritual resources in here. And in fact, you might even say, Valerie, I'm going to be praying for you in these areas, that God will give you, see, transferring responsibility, God will give you some solutions that will help you to overcome these areas. So let's talk about some solutions now, Valerie. Let's just take one of those. We'll meet a number of times, and in fact, after this meeting where we've just shared this, I might say, that's great. Let's think about this. Let's come back tomorrow. Let me think about it. I think maybe I can think of some ideas that might help you. I might do some research and find out what some other kids have done about this. Let me get back to you, because I think I can bring some solutions. So that's all we do in that meeting. Next day, we get together and we say, Valerie, you're not going to believe this. I got some great ideas for you in handling that, tools for dealing with conflict. I found a bunch of things that I think might be helpful. Could we meet tonight and talk about them? I think you're really going to like this. Now, everything's positive, you see, at this point. We're trying to win her heart. We're trying to change her desires. We're trying to appeal to this uncomfortable feeling she has about emotions. We're using the Holy Spirit in her heart. All of those things we're saying, and we say, okay, let's get together. I got some ideas. She may be skeptical because maybe she thinks you're going to correct her or something. We're not to correction yet. What we are is we're just trying to develop a plan. And I say, hey, look, I've got some ideas. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create this T-chart here, and I'm going to write above the top on one side, I'm going to write the word suggestions for you. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to write your name, which is Valerie. Okay? Now, I don't know, Valerie, which ones of these are going to work best for you, but I'd like you to tell me as we're going through. Let's just deal with anger management here, okay? And anger, by the way, always happens in an arena. So let's choose an arena, maybe with your brother. Okay? Anger with your brother. Or maybe when I correct you, all right? Whatever it is. Okay? Let's choose an arena and see what we can do. Okay? Now, I'm going to offer some suggestions, but before I do, what do you think you could do that would allow you to be more at peace in the midst of an anger situation with your brother? Because I want to help you do that. I know your brother's obnoxious sometimes. He teases you, gives you a hard time. I'm going to help you with that. What are some things? And she says, well, you could discipline him more or something, focusing the problem on her brother instead of on herself. Say, okay, that's good. Maybe I'll do that. Let's talk about the situation where he's teasing you and he's doing the wrong thing. What can you do in those moments that will help you keep your anger under control so it doesn't blow up? Let me give you some ideas. One is you need a plan. You could use words. Okay, or another thing is you could get help from me because I will help you when your brother's being obnoxious. Or maybe you could just play a game with yourself that says, I wonder how long I can stay in this situation without blowing up, and I'm going to control my own ability. Maybe you could, I'll just put game here to reference that. Another one is maybe you could develop more tolerance. Let me explain what tolerance is. Tolerance, we all have a meter inside of our heart, and when the meter goes over to the side, then the alarms go off and we get angry. Tolerance is expanding that so that the meter doesn't go off as often. So one of the things we can do is develop tolerance. There's some Bible verses. We could pray. We could use a scripture. All right, now I've just shared a bunch of things that other people do. Valerie, does that ring any bells? Maybe you have something else you'd add here, or maybe there's something here we could move over here. What do you think would be helpful for you in order to develop these things? Let's talk about that. Now, what I'm trying to do in this moment is I'm trying to get Valerie to take some ownership for part of the solution, not just the problem. Does that make sense to you guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're trying, because she's an adolescent in the first stage of adolescence, okay? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to treat her more as an adolescent or someone on the way to adulthood by saying, okay, you're big enough now, you're 13. I'm sure you probably have a lot of ideas. You've learned some of these things from other people. And we start developing a Valerie solution. We take some things from here. Valerie also says, okay, here's what else I'll do. And she's got some ideas for herself. And we make this list of 5, 6 things. Okay? Now, we have this list and we say, okay, let's go work on it. I'll tell you what. Let's take a moment to pray right now. And let's ask that God would give you the strength to go in and work with your brother when he's especially trying to egg you on or tease you, or he's got taking your stuff or something like that. Okay, we got to have a plan for dealing with that. And I know he can be hard, so I want to help you. I want to coach you through this. So let's go. Let's go for it. Or let's talk about correction if that's the area. When I correct you, I want to correct you. That's part of my job as a dad, is to correct you. And I want to do it in a way that you can accept. How best would you like me to do that? I know you like me to hug you sometimes. Would you like me to hug you while I'm correcting you? Would that be helpful? Or maybe you'd like me to use a quieter voice. Tell me, how can I make the correction process easier? Give me some ideas so that I can help you as you're trying to deal with your anger in regards to correction. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
What you're doing is you're asking your daughter for help in parenting. Great parenting strategy, because you'll learn some things about your daughter's heart. I just want to go to anger real quick just for a moment, all right? If we take all of her anger episodes and you were to map them, you would find out that we have all of these different arenas out here where she's experiencing anger. She experiences anger with herself when she can't get her schooling done properly. She experiences anger with her brother. She experiences anger with you when you say no, she can't have something that she wants. She experiences anger with all kinds of, with a computer when it doesn't do what she wants. Okay, all of those are arenas, and we're going to have solutions for each one of those. It's not just one big solution. We're going to develop solutions, but each one of these represent an arena. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
So explain it to her in that terms. I'd draw the picture and I'd say, hey, I can help you because this is going to give you some great opportunities in order to move forward. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to give her the ability to develop. See, we can talk about what it looks like at point B. We want to be calm. We want you to have the tools. But then we have to teach you. Teaching gets us the how. How. And that's what I'm trying to do with the plan for Valerie. Valerie, let's develop a plan. Okay, so now we've worked on this. We tried to develop a plan for Valerie. We've identified some things that she's going to do. And now we start living life in hopes that she's going to find herself in a difficult situation where she would normally be tempted, I'm going to use spiritual terms here, where she would normally be tempted to sin by erupting in anger. Okay, anger's not wrong, it's the eruption that's the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm using some spiritual terms with her because she's a teenager. I want you to know, I might not use spiritual terminology with younger children because I don't want to give them the impression that every time they sin, God is there ready to judge them or something. And if that's happening with Valerie, we want to back off because we want to talk. Valerie needs to feel safe. God is the one who protects her. And so I would use a number of the Psalms in order to help her understand that God is her protector. That is his primary job in her life, to be the father, the protector of her, not the judge. In fact, God would best be considered a counselor, as taught in the New Testament, that comes alongside her like you're trying to come alongside her to coach her to get. You're the coach. The Holy Spirit is the counselor in order to get her from point A to point B. Okay?
Yes.
All right, so let's assume that now you've got a plan. She's embraced this plan. She goes to do it, and now we have to correct her, because having a plan is good, because what I've done so far is we've tried to outline what we're going to hold her accountable to. That's what we've done here. So we've got a plan here that gives her access to some tools as to here's how we're going to handle life. Here's what you do when your brother's obnoxious, or he's teasing you or taunting you or something. Here's how you handle it. And so we're giving her a plan, and then we're going to hold her accountable to it. And that's going to be important, because that's going to require some firmness. Her typical way that she's approaching is at point A, she's approaching her plans with things that, like yelling or verbal abuse or passive-aggressive things that you've talked about. And our job is to make that uncomfortable, and firmness is going to do that. So we're going to teach her how to, by being firm, we're going to help her see that we can't stay at point A. Now, one of the ways I think you're going to work with Valerie is you're going to call her out to have conversations. We're going to have to do this more with her, because she reacts violently. She's so self-protective that she needs to feel safe in order to deal with conflict. We want to create an environment for correction that may be different, or I don't know if it's the same as you're doing, but I just want to make a suggestion that whenever we correct her, we'll say, here's what we're going to do for correction. We're going to call you out to the table, and we're going to have a sit-down meeting and talk about it. And when we sit down, I'll be happy to listen, or I'll be happy to talk. You can decide what you want to do first. You can listen, or you can talk. If you want to talk, I'll listen to what you have to say. You want to tell me how obnoxious your brother is, I'll listen to what you have to say. Or you want to tell me how unfair I am by correcting you, I'll listen to that. And then I'll need to talk at some point. You'll want to listen to me. Okay, and we'll sit at the table and we'll talk back and forth about this. Now, if you get upset and you can't handle the table, then you're going to have to go take a break. But when you're in a break, you cannot go in your bedroom. You can't play with your cell phone. You're not on the internet. You're not watching TV. Okay, you lose all of those privileges, not because I'm punishing you, but because your purpose is for you to settle down and come back to the table. And frankly, when we're at the table, sometimes I may get upset as a dad or mom, and I'll need to say, okay, look, I think it's getting heated here. I need to take a break for a few minutes. I'll come back to you in a few minutes. And then you may need to take a break and step away from the table. The table becomes then the safe place where we can dialogue, and she's listened to. I would encourage you to do a lot of listening, partly because she's a teenager, a young teenager, developing a value system, partly because she has a history of anger, and she feels like the whole world's out to get her, and she's being mistreated, and so on. And then partly because that's a way for her to communicate to herself. She will talk, and as she's talking, she'll learn some more things about herself. So I want to do a lot of listening, but then you're going to come back and say, okay, I understand what you're saying. Your brother was obnoxious. You're right. He shouldn't have taken the iPod from you. That was the wrong thing to do. So, but we got to have a plan, because the way you punched him in the nose wasn't a good idea, or whatever she did. Okay, you can't call him those kind of names. So we got to have a plan. In fact, it seems to me that you lost it there and you weren't calm. So let's go back to our plan, and we take her back to the plan. Now, there's a lot of things we do here to offer discipline, but the discipline is teaching. You're going to offer firmness that says we're not going to live this way anymore. Well, I'm sorry, you need to come out to the table. No access to your bedroom or whatever for a bit. And I'm not asking you to resolve anything except to come to the table and let's talk about it. Okay, we cannot handle ourselves this way. You don't have to say, okay, I'm taking away your iPod now because you grabbed it from your brother or something. We don't have to go to those kind of consequences at this point. What we're doing is using more non-confrontational discipline, non-confrontational correction with her in order to appeal to her, what I would consider some special needs. I'm not talking about her physical needs. I'm talking about her emotional needs at this point. She has some problems. She needs to be addressed. And I would use non-confrontational discipline by calling her to the table, presenting your case, and I would say to her, I'm feeling like you're not obeying me when I do this, or I'm feeling like I'm trying to correct you, do my job, and you're giving me a hard time. We got to do something about this because it isn't right. You're still being firm, no less firm than if you were to come in and say, okay, give me your iPod, you're out of here. Now you're doing it in a way that's non-confrontational, in the sense it's not so harsh. And I'm not opposed to confrontation, okay? With another family, I'd say, let's try confrontation first. I just don't think that's working with Valerie. And we probably need to try some other things here in order to bring her to a place that she changes. The heart is where we're working. So what we're trying to do in her heart is we're going to try to change her beliefs, her beliefs about herself, about anger, about whose problem it is. It's her problem, and we're going to try to help her solve it. That's why we have the T-chart. We're going to try to change some of the way she handles her emotions. This is all heart-related stuff. We're going to talk about God lives in the heart. We're going to try to use the Lord's work in her life and encourage her, whether she's a believer or not. We're going to encourage her to rely on the Holy Spirit more, and God will do a work in her heart. We're going to help her develop some convictions, not convictions like I'm right, you're wrong kind of convictions, but convictions that come from God's Word about how we handle ourselves. All of those things are designed to help her see some change. Now, you're going to try to measure this change over the period of time, over the next 6 months, I would say. In the next 6 months, you ought to see some change if you're working this kind of a plan in order to move forward. Now, I've shared with you a lot of things. Let me ask you this. Are you hearing anything from me that you're finding helpful at this point?
Absolutely, a lot. We have tried a non-confrontational approach, and as soon as we address something that it'll hit a trigger, and she automatically shuts down. And when I say she shuts down, she will turn away from you. She won't make eye contact. She won't talk. Communication is just shut down.
Okay, so at that point,
we're not.
Go ahead.
We're not saying your approach won't work because I think it's good.
Absolutely.
I imagine her, based on history, sitting with her arms crossed, turned, looking away from us, and not having the conversation.
Okay, so at that moment, when she does that, I would say to her, I would stop talking about the correction issue, and I would say, well, it looks like we flipped here. It looks like you're starting to be protective, and you're done with this conversation. Maybe you just need to sit there for a while and let me know when you're ready. We can talk about it some more. Or maybe you want to talk. I'd be happy to listen. Do you feel like I'm being unfair? And so I want to break her out of this, her passive defiance at this point. So I probably wouldn't do a lot of talking past her obstinate behavior, her nonverbal communication at this point. I would say, look, whoa, wait a minute. Remember, I'm trying to help you here. What am I doing something wrong? Tell me what you want me to do here. How can I help you? We're staying essentially, I want to help you. We're still moving forward in this. We're not giving up on the correction. But if tell me what you need to do. It sounds like, looks like I've lost you. You want to come over here and hug me for a bit? What do you want to do? You want to go take a walk outside? Go ahead. Go take a walk outside and come back and see me. And let's talk about this some more. This is something we got to talk about. It's important. You can't just mistreat me like that. Let's go. And so we're trying to woo her out of this difficult pattern that she's in. And sometimes you may have to be firm and say, okay, look, all life stops for you until you come back to the table and are willing to talk about it. So you're not sleeping in your bedroom tonight. You're not going to be on the computer. You're not getting anything. Okay, you're done until you come back and talk to me. So there may be something along that line you use as firmness. I'm just saying that's more confrontational. I would tend to wish that we could go to some other approaches in addition to that would win her heart. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open the phone lines and let's see if there's anybody else who wants to ask a question. And then we may come back to you at the end, and you may have some other additional questions or comments that you'd like to make, okay? All right, let's, here's what we can do, folks. There are other people on this line. I'm not sure how many of you are in front of computers or how many of you have microphones even. If you would like to ask a question, there's a way in the computer program. Toward the bottom, there's a little hand, and if you click on the hand, it raises your hand so we know you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. Also, if you don't have that ability or want to talk to me or don't have a microphone, then you can type in your question in the comments below, and we can respond to you that way. If anyone has a question, we can try to respond. In addition, so you can ask questions about what we just talked about with this particular family, or maybe you've got some other issues regarding correction you'd like to ask, and or about anything that this kind of rings a bell for you in your particular family. And we can try to troubleshoot some particular areas for you if you would like. Let me just jot down a couple things here. All right, sounds a lot of people are thinking. Nobody's asking questions, which is fine with me. What is the difference between a headphones and a telephone? Andrew?
Phones means they're on the computer. It doesn't necessarily mean they're on
These
a mic.
people are all on the computer, but these people have also called in.
Got it. Okay.
In addition, so some of them are on the computer and called in.
All right. That's fine.
So
Okay.
they might raise their hand down here, but actually talk up here.
Got it. Okay. Let's do this. I want to go back and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this issue because I think maybe we can give Valerie some more solutions that will be helpful for her in the midst of this. So I'm going to add some more things for you guys that I think would be helpful. And if anybody wants to interrupt me, they can, and we can go forward with that. In order for us to help Valerie change her heart, we have to change some patterns. I'm not talking about parental patterns, although likely you're going to have to change some parental patterns. I'm talking about her patterns that are inside of her heart. The patterns represent tendencies. And you, as parents, want to target those tendencies very specifically. You're telling me about a tendency that she has that when you talk to her about or try to correct her, she turns away, folds her hands or crosses her arms, and she gives you a nonverbal statement that she doesn't want to talk or something like that. We want to break that. Now, I would not try to break that typically by force. In other words, I wouldn't just come and overpower her with emotion or physically get in her face or something like that. Typically, I would try to break it with a strategy that does not meet what she would expect. I might even use something. Remember, we have an ultimate goal here is to help her change, okay? So I'm going to offer some suggestions that are not typical, but they might help with Valerie. I might even use some humor at that point. Okay, I might come over to her and say, "Whoa, looks like you're acting like a statue there," and poke her a little bit, not in a way to make her mad, and she may get mad and say, "Hey, come on, work with me, come on, let's get together here." So I might try to relate to her differently, or I might say, "Let's do this. Come on, let's go out and take a walk, you and me. Let's go outside for a little bit, and let's walk up the street and see if what we can do." So I'm trying to break this habit or tendency that she has. She has a lot of them that aren't good, and you may be able to point that out to her later at other times. In non-disciplined times, you might say to her, "I've noticed that one of the things that happens to you when you get upset is that you fold your arms and turn your body away, kind of making this. What is that saying anyway? Are you saying? What are you saying? Are you saying, I don't like you, I'm not happy with you, or you're right and I don't want to admit it? What kind of message are you trying to communicate? Remember, this is a non-disciplined time. And you may be taking a walk when you're talking about this, but you're just trying to draw attention to this tendency. And you might say, okay, look, what did I do in my way of relating to you? Is there some point that I crossed a line that caused you to back off and be that way? Let's talk about it. Give me some ideas. I don't want you to shut me down. We've got to be able to deal with this. I mean, obviously, that you do some things wrong at times. So do I. We need correction. That's part of life. So what can I do? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to help Valerie change some tendencies. If I were you, I'd sit down with a pad and I'd try to write down as many tendencies as you can. Her tendency when you correct her, what's the very first words out of her mouth? Is she blaming her brother? Is she yelling at you? What is it? And then I'd say, then I'd come to her later and I'd say, I've noticed that whenever I try to correct you about something that maybe you've done wrong, you tend to want to blame it on your brother or something. Can we talk about that? Surely you don't believe that all the problems in life are caused by your brother. You must be able to admit that sometimes you make a mistake, right? Have you ever made a mistake? Like I can tell you, I made a mistake at work yesterday. I'll tell you what I did. Can you tell me a mistake you made? Because I feel like that's a hard thing for you. Why is that so hard for you? All of this kind of dialogue that we're doing with her is working in a part of her heart that's getting her to reconstruct some of her responses and to question them. Much of this is self-protection. Much of this is coping mechanisms that she's using in order to create some way so we can't penetrate what's going on in her heart. She's developing this hard heart. So I think doing some work in her in regards to that would be helpful. Would you open up their phone line again?
Sure.
So what do you think about that, guys?
I think that's all really good. I do have a question about
Okay.
About if there's 100 things a day that need to be addressed with her, which sometimes it feels like there are.
Yes.
How many make how many do we address? Do we lose the battle if we address 50 and
Well,
lose? Because I feel like we lose them, or we lose the battles all the time.
okay.
So I feel like we lose ground sometimes. Then she feels like we're berating her. She's like a dog in mud around the house.
Yeah.
And so when you try to address those issues that are all over the house, and you ask her to take care of something, and it happens all day long,
Yeah.
all over the house, she feels attacked. I don't know what to address, what not to address.
Good. Okay, so let's say you have 100 things that you need to address. I just want you to know if you address 10 of them, 75 more of those things will dissipate. Okay, so you just got to know if you start making progress in certain areas, you'll be surprised at what happens in some other areas. It just tends to flow into other areas of our lives. I think that one of the most important areas that I'm trying to address here with her is the relating pattern she has with you when in the midst of conflict. If we can deal with that one piece, then where she takes things personally, she doesn't handle conflict well, and she gets angry. If we can deal with a little bit of that piece, then we have the tools necessary to go into these other areas where she leaves a mess around the house, where she doesn't get up on time, where she's lying. You know, we got all of these other issues that need to be addressed in her life, but we need some tools in order to get there. So I'm not saying you can't address those, and you may have to make observations and say to her when she's lying, you know, that wasn't true. I'm sorry, I'm disappointed that you're lying, and then leave it. So all you're doing is making an observation. You might not bring down the mallet of correction at that point, but you're just acknowledging that you know it's a problem, and you're staying on these things that are most crucial for her to develop a working relationship surrounding conflict. If you can do
The
that.
reason that I ask that is because I feel like she believes I'm the problem, and I don't know where I need to back out to make her take responsibility.
Yeah, I understand that
Does
because,
that make
yeah, your job is to correct her. There's a lot of things she needs to be corrected in. So every time she turns around, you're trying to work with her in some area, and it's a problem for her. So I understand that. That's why she's blaming you and trying to draw attention to you.
Right.
Okay, so what we're doing, that's why we have to transfer responsibility to Valerie.
Right.
That's why this
Okay.
initial T-chart is so important, because what we're saying there is, in that T-chart, we're saying, okay, what do you think would be good for the change? You can tell me anything you want about me parenting you differently. If you feel like I'm being overly critical and I'm picking on lots of different things, that's fine. Okay, I'm willing to back off on some of those things. Let's agree on some things that would be good for me to work on with you and coach you on, because I have to deal with some things. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what I'm going to help you with. And let's start with the way let's talk about our relationship. That's probably the most important thing. We want to have a close relationship. Let's see if we can do that. And so there's sometimes when I have to correct you. How can we preserve our working relationship in the midst of correction? You can correct me too, by the way, Valerie. When I'm doing something wrong, I'm interested to be corrected, because I want to grow in my skills as well. And I think God's brought you into this family to help me grow. And so I'm interested in learning. But I have a job to do, and that is to correct you sometimes. So show me how I can do it differently. Let's develop that part of our working relationship. And so we're helping her take responsibility for certain parts of this and trying to move forward. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. What you just said is so awesome, because we do tell her that we believe that God put her in our family with us so that we could be better parents. We tell her that regularly.
Good. And so I think you want to give her the freedom to correct you at times. That obviously can get out of hand. But the point
Sure.
is, it's a mutual thing. We live in a family. It means correction. It's part of God's way of helping us grow. So I've noticed that you've had a problem with that sometimes. How can I correct you in a way, or how can you respond to correction better? In fact, why don't we practice? Okay? I'm going to correct you, right? I'm going to correct you because your coat's at the front door. I'm going to correct you now. See how you can respond to me. I say, Valerie, you left your coat at the front door after I asked you not to. I'd like you to move it into your room. Now, how are you going to respond to me when I just corrected you? And so we're trying to teach her how to respond better in minor things, and we try to advance them into more significant things. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, let me just conclude where we are here. I think that you guys have a very shall I say, challenging situation. It is not easy. I hope that my trying to offer some quick solutions doesn't imply that I think your situation is easy. I think your situation is complex. And it's very difficult. And you've got a lot of things that are challenges that you're trying to face all at the same time, none the least of which is the medical problems that your daughter is experiencing. However, I do think it's important for Valerie at age 13 to be able to take responsibility for herself and to start moving forward in some areas of personal growth. And so that's why we're trying to help her identify what those are. Instead of just saying, hey, I'm the dad, here's what you got to do because I'm the dad. Now we're saying, all right, let's talk about some of these things. What do you think would be good? So we're helping her to take responsibility. We're helping her then to develop a plan, and then we're holding her accountable to that plan using some firmness, some coaching, and so on. And that will help her to, what we're trying to do is change what she believes, change how she processes things, and change some of those tendencies that are in the heart in order to help her move forward. That's our goal here. So I would encourage you to hang in there. You're talking about a long-term solution. Just as your medical problems are long-term solutions, you're going to have to do some long-term work on this emotional heart kinds of issues with her in order to help her move forward. But I'm confident that if you do the hard work, you're going to see some change in Valerie. She'll become more encouraged. She'll feel hopeful because God changes people, and He loves to work in the heart. Now, what we tried to do, and I know other people are listening here and certainly will listen to this, I just want to suggest that just because I've said these certain things about Valerie doesn't mean that they be necessarily beneficial for another family. I would say take some ideas that you think might work, try them, but there are a host of things we haven't talked about. So if you have a situation in your family where you'd like to see correction developed or a specific plan, we might take a whole different route. So we have webinars on a regular basis, and if you have an idea for a webinar or you'd like to be a featured parent for a webinar, shoot us an email, and we'd love to get you involved in that. Meanwhile, you can visit us at two places. One is biblicalparenting.org, where you can get all kinds of parenting resources, and the other is Biblical Parenting University, an online parent training program that allows you to receive all kinds of resources for growth in parenting. So God bless you. Hang in there. It's a difficult job that we do as parents, but that work that we do, we need the spiritual resources that God provides. So God bless you as you continue to do that hard work of parenting.